In our previous episode, we witnessed how Muslim rulers united under the banner of Islam, laying the groundwork for a formidable force that would soon shake the foundations of the Crusader kingdom. This burgeoning power was poised to ignite the fuse of conflict, setting the stage for a confrontation that would echo through history. But who was the catalyst for this impending storm? What event would serve as the spark that would light the tinderbox of war? Join us as we uncover the secrets of Episode 4, The Brewing Storm. Our story begins with a man of noble birth, Reginald of Chatillon, Lord of Carrick. Born into a world of medieval chivalry and religious fervor, Reginald's story would take a dark turn, leading him to become the embodiment of provocation. In an age when honor and glory were measured in martial prowess and land acquisition, Reginald sought to carve out his legacy through conquest. However, his ambitions did not align with the principles of fairness and piety held dear by the Muslim community. In a moment of reckless abandon, Reginald and his band of knights launched a surprise attack on a peaceful Muslim trade caravan, traversing the treacherous desert pass. These caravans were not just a means of commerce. They were vital lifelines carrying essential resources and provisions to sustain communities. In the harsh desert environment, they were symbols of the cultural exchange and economic prosperity that had flourished along the trade routes of the medieval world. But Reginald saw not trade or cultural exchange, only targets. His knights descended upon the unsuspecting Muslims with the fury of a tempest, shattering the tranquility of the desert. With swords flashing and shields raised high, they engaged the caravan guards in a brutal display of unbridled aggression. The ensuing battle was swift and merciless, decided by the superior numbers and battle-hardened skills of Reginald's knights. The caravan's defenses, designed to protect merchants and their wares, were no match for the attackers' bloodlust. As the dust settled, the desert floor bore witness to a haunting sight. Merchants lay strewn across the sand, their lives extinguished, their dreams turned to dust. The caravan's precious cargo was plundered, stripped from its protective chests and scattered amidst the debris. And to add insult to injury, the very essence of Islam was mocked. Reginald's knights, driven by a zeal of misguided righteousness, defiled places of worship, desecrating them with acts of vandalism that cut deep into the heart of Muslim life. The sanctity of the mosque, the spiritual solace it provided, was replaced with the stench of destruction and despair. And so it was that the peace treaty between the kingdoms lay shattered, broken by Reginald's reckless actions. The seeds of conflict were sown, and with them the anticipation of a showdown that would reverberate through the ages. As the whispers of Reginald's atrocities spread far and wide, a wave of indignation and outrage swept through the Muslim communities. From bustling cities to remote villages, the tales of the desecrated caravans and slain Muslims ignited a fire of vengeance, uniting people of different backgrounds and beliefs under a common banner of fury. Amidst the seething mass of emotion stood Salah ad-Din, a man whose resolve was as unyielding as the desert sands. His heart pounded with righteous anger as he grappled with the news of Reginald's audacious attack on the Muslim caravan. Each tale of brutality and sacrilege fueled his determination to mete out justice, to quell the rising tide of hatred with decisive action. It was a heavy burden to bear, but one he shouldered with the quiet strength that had become his hallmark. His mind, a fortress of strategic brilliance, began to strategize. The massacre of the caravan demanded retribution, not just for the spilled blood, but for the desecration of Islam itself. And so it was that the wheels of justice and vengeance were set in motion. Salah ad-Din rallied his forces, preparing to march against Reginald and his knights, to right the wrongs and restore honor to those who had been unjustly attacked. And as his army assembled, a hush fell over the vast gathering. The men looked to their leader, their faces etched with determination, their eyes blazing with the fire of righteous anger. When Salah ad-Din spoke, his voice echoed with the power of conviction. He painted a vivid picture of the atrocities committed by Reginald, stirring hearts and emboldening spirits. Each word was a hammer blow, forging a unity of purpose in the ranks of his soldiers. They were not just soldiers, they were instruments of justice, about to strike down tyranny and oppression. As the Grand Assembly continued, the plans were laid out, strategies discussed and alliances solidified. This was not just a battle, it was a crusade for justice, a testament to the unbreakable spirit of Islam. So it was that under the banner of justice and in the name of their faith, Salah ad-Din and his vast Muslim army set out on their journey to confront Reginald of Chatillon and his knights head-on. On the other side of the battlefield stood Reginald of Chatillon, basking in the ill-gotten spoils of his recent conquests. Within the confines of his stronghold, he reveled in the riches he had plundered from the Muslim caravan. oblivious to the storm that brewed on the horizon. His knights, a band of hardened warriors, shared in his delight, their minds focused on the immediate pleasures of their victory rather than the ominous clouds gathering on the battlefield of justice. News of Reginald's atrocities had reached the ears of the Muslim ruler, Salah ad-Din, who was consumed by righteous anger. With an army that mirrored the vastness of the desert sky, Salah ad-Din descended upon Reginald's position, determined to make him pay for his crimes. The stage was set for a clash of iron and faith, where the scales of justice hung precariously in the balance. But little did Reginald know that his moment of triumph was fleeting, overshadowed by the looming presence of his nemesis, ready to bring him to justice. As the two armies faced off on the sun-baked plains of Haddon, the air crackled with tension. The Muslim army, led by the indomitable Salah ad-Din, loomed like a wall of righteous fury, their every move echoing with the strength of their unity. On the other side, Reginald and his knights stood firm, their faces grim, their armor gleaming defiantly in the harsh sunlight. What followed was a spectacle of medieval warfare, a whirlwind of clashing steel and thundering hoofs. The Muslim archers unleashed a volley of arrows, each one singing a song of vengeance, while the Crusaders, with shields raised high, formed a bulwark against the onslaught. But as the battle raged, the tides turned. Saladin, a master strategist, exploited every advantage, maneuvering his forces with the precision of a seasoned general. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows on the battlefield, the Crusaders began to falter. Their numbers dwindled, their energy sapped by the relentless heat of the desert. It was then that Saladin struck, pushing forward with a force that was unstoppable, like a desert wind sweeping away all resistance. The Crusader lines buckled under the pressure, their ranks breaking apart as the Muslim army surged ahead, their cries of Allahu Akbar echoing across the plains. Amidst the chaos of the battlefield, a lone figure stood out, Reginald of Chatillon, his face contorted with a mixture of determination and fear. He fought with the desperation of a cornered lion, his every strike aimed at survival. But as the minutes ticked by, it became clear that his fate was sealed. The weight of his earlier transgressions, the lives he had taken, the desecrations he had committed, all came crashing down on him in the form of Saladin's unwavering pursuit. As the sun began its descent, casting the battlefield in hues of orange and red, the final confrontation occurred. Reginald, his armor dented and his spirit broken, found himself at the mercy of his conqueror. The once proud knight was now a captive, his head bowed in defeat, awaiting his punishment. In the aftermath of the battle, as the echoes of the clashing swords faded into the stillness of the evening, the true extent of the defeat became clear. Among the defeated and captured was Reginald of Chatillon, the man whose arrogance and cruelty had ignited the flames of war. Now he stood before Saladin, not as a warrior, but as a supplicant, his fate hanging in the balance. Saladin, with the magnanimity that had become his trademark, chose to spare the lives of many Crusaders, granting them freedom in exchange for their surrender. However, Reginald's fate was different. His transgressions against Islam and his defiance in the face of overwhelming odds called for a different kind of retribution. The execution of Reginald was a somber affair, devoid of the pomp and circumstance of medieval pageantry. There was no fanfare, no trumpet blasts announcing his demise. Instead, there was a quiet finality to it, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition and religious intolerance. For Reginald, the end came swiftly and decisively, a stark contrast to the brutality he had shown during his lifetime. And as the news of Reginald's execution spread across the land, a sense of somber satisfaction swept through the Muslim communities. Justice had been served, and the memory of those who had fallen in the Battle of Haddon was honored. As the sun set over the plains of Galilee, casting long shadows that stretched towards the horizon, a profound silence fell over the camp of the Muslim army. Amidst the hushed whispers and solemn prayers, a single figure stood apart, his gaze fixed on the distant skyline. It was Salah ad-Din, his heart heavy with the burden of victory. The battle was won, but the road ahead was fraught with challenges. The Crusader kingdom, though weakened, was far from defeated, and the task of retaking Jerusalem, the very heart of his faith, loomed on the horizon. Yet amidst the weight of these responsibilities, there was a flicker of determination in his eyes. Salah ad-Din knew that the struggle was far from over. The very essence of Islam, the spirit of unity and resilience, ran through his veins, urging him forward. He had tasted victory, but it was a victory laced with the bittersweetness of sacrifice and loss. The faces of those who had fallen in the Battle of Haddon were etched in his memory, and their sacrifice fueled his resolve. And so as the night deepened and the stars twinkled above the plains of Galilee, Saladin stood resolute, preparing to face the challenges that lay ahead. The battle for Jerusalem, the very heart of his faith, was yet to be fought, and he, the humble servant of Islam, was ready to answer the call. We hope you enjoyed the 4th episode of our series, which brought to life the brewing storm that culminated in the epic Battle of Haddon. If you have been captivated by the unfolding saga of Saladin and eager to witness the upcoming episodes, stay tuned. We are committed to delivering top-notch historical content that brings history's greatest figures and events to life. Your support means the world to us, so don't forget to show your support.